take long for you guys to pull the trigger there at 75? Was Jace a guy that you've been targeting for a while?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say for a while because obviously, Jace started at Kansas as a wide receiver, was in JUCO, and he really got to Texas A&M this year. Hasn't been there that long. Really burst onto the scene this year. Put up a lot of early numbers, so our guys were aware of him pretty early in the season. But it wasn't a guy that's been there for 3 or 4 years. It's been producing. So, but had an outstanding year there in a pro system. Matchup problem in college, and we think that he can translate that to the NFL.
What did you learn about him when he was here for the visit that you didn't learn about him when you met with him at the combine?
I just think we got a chance to spend more time, and I think not only myself and our scouts, but our coaches as well, just kind of spend some more time to see how he was going to fit. And he's a coach's kid. I grew up playing sports. He's been competitive all his life, and those are some of the things that drew us to him.
What's the tight end need to do in Matt's offense?
They obviously they have multiple different positions for the tight ends. There's different kinds of guys. He certainly likes a wide tight end that can come off the ball and block in some of the run stuff. He also uses an F tight end that can move around, be in the backfield. We kind of think Jace kind of fits that tight end that can kind of be a matchup problem. I think he's a tough cover down the field. He can create separation from backers and safeties. Can stretch the seam. So. Again, he had 1 year at Texas A&M. There's a lot of development there. So, but we're excited. We're excited to get him with the group that we got and see what he can do.
I know when we talked to you last night, you were very much on the best player available. But now that you drafted a tight end, how important was it to add specifically to that position?
Yeah, again, he was the best player on our board, so that's the way we went. We thought it would be nice to add a tight end. We thought it was a pretty decent class this year, but it wasn't something that I felt like we had to add in this draft. I like the guys we got in the room already, and I think Jace will be another nice addition to that. But I didn't feel like we had to add one in this draft.
What appealed to you about Jenkins?
A bunch of stuff. His versatility is exceptional, but he's a big, long man with excellent power. He's been a good player in the SEC for about 3 years now. Really, really consistent. His ability to play basically all 5 spots on the offensive line in the SEC was something that really kind of drew us to him. You go back, watch him play guard in 16 and the different years, and I mean he's playing at a very high level against some very good players. Obviously, they moved him to center, which is a lot of times where you put your best players in college because they kind of run the show there. So he was able to do that. So his flexibility obviously was really important, but obviously where we took him, we think he has a chance to be a really good player in the NFL, whether it's guard, center, tackle.
Is it any challenge at all projecting a center to guard, or is that a pretty easy projection?
I don't know if it's easy or hard. He's played both, so we visually got to see him play at a high level at both. So he was at the Senior Bowl as well and did some of that stuff. So. If they've never ever played it, maybe there's a little bit of a projection that can be difficult. But usually, if they play inside, whether it's center or guard, you kind of feel they can do that.
Think he could make at least a run at a starting job as rookie?
We'll see. I mean, these guys haven't stepped on our field. Obviously, we took him pretty high, so we feel pretty good about him as a player. How quickly that'll happen, that'll just kind of depend on Matt and the coaching staff and how quickly they get him there.
Take steps he could tackle.
Yeah, he's certainly taken snaps in games at Mississippi State doing that. It's his length. I think he's ideally suited inside, and that's where we drafted him as. But like, if he had to get you out of a game at tackle, I think he's certainly athletic enough to do it.
Brian, did you have any offers to move back and maybe try and get yourself back into the 4th round tomorrow? Were those conversations real close? And you kind of
yeah, we talked about a number of things. It was something we looked at. A couple of things that came into play was just the compensation we were getting for moving back, and quite frankly, how far we were moving back. So when it came time to pick today, both in the 3rd round and the 4th round, the distance we had to move back to acquire the right compensation just wasn't something I wanted to do. We had players at those times that we felt really good about picking. So that's kind of how once we traded those 2 4th-round picks yesterday, our ammunition was a little less than what it was to be able to move around in these rounds. So I kind of felt that might be how it would shake out. But we feel fortunate to get the 2 guys we got.
It would be pretty hard now to get into that 4th round.
We'll see.
anything to say about Jenkins?
Yeah, big fan of him. Obviously, he was the center for his offense there. Last year, they kind of ran the show for him. So he's a grown man. He's got the one thing that at the Senior Bowl that I went to Mississippi State this year, so I got to see him there. But at the Senior Bowl, the one thing that kind of you could really see was his ability to move big men. He's got power, and so that was kind of what sold me.
Brian, I talked about this a bit before, but do you see these two guys impacting your offense already this season?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we took them pretty high. I certainly would hope that they could make solid contributions to our team this year. But until they get here and they can prove it on the field, I mean, it's really early. We like their long-term potential. We always feel the draft is kind of a long-term investment, but these guys were taken high for a reason.
Brian, I know there's obviously a couple more picks tomorrow, but I mean, in February you said how much you liked the receiver room, Aaron and Jamal, the running back. Is this, free agency these first couple days, does that kind of prove just how much you really do like the skill guys that you already had here?
Yeah. I don't know if it proves it. I mean, I do like those rooms very, very much. It's not that we stayed away from running backs or receivers because, I mean, if the best players available or it was a running back or receiver, we would have taken them. But I do like both those rooms very much.
With how much your coach wants to run the ball, and the injury history with Aaron Jones, how important is it to come out with a running back sometime tomorrow and another guy to that mix?
Yeah, I think we're going to try to stick to best player available. If it's a running back, that's great. I think you got to stay a little bit away from trying to fill too many needs, especially in this bottom half of the draft, because there's going to be some really good players there. And if it's an area need, great. But if it's not, then, there's other ways to fill those needs as well. I kind of like some of the guys in our room, I said that will compete for that third spot. We'll kind of see how it shakes out. But I really try to stay away from feeling like I got to do this. And I think the way we kind of built our team this offseason, I've never been in that spot yet. So.
Hey, Brian, what did you guys have for a tie on Sternberger?
I think we were in 4.66, right in there. Yeah.
Brian, how did you view the tight end class? Did you think it was, a couple guys at the top and then a bunch of guys together beyond that? Or-
Yeah, no, I think we had a number of guys, was more than a couple at the very top that we thought had a chance to potentially develop into difference maker tight ends. And then I thought the kind of the second tier of guys or so much was a little bit thicker. I think there's a bunch of guys out there still, that could help some teams. So overall it was we kind of thought there was a little bit of a separation between the top guys and then a big group down in the second half.
Were you looking for something specific out of the tight end that you would get out of it, or were you just basing it on?
Yeah. I mean, there's some guys that are kind of all around tight ends. There's some other guys that might be, more receiving, and guys that are, more your typical wide tight end on the line of scrimmage blockers. Jace kind of, we kind of thought right now he's probably a matchup problem that could grow into more, a guy who could play on the line of scrimmage and be a Y. We don't really separate them. We kind of just value their skills, their traits, and try to stack them that way.
I don't want to misconstrue what you just said there. So did you have him, Jace, kind of in the same ballpark as Fant and Hockenson, or? Yeah,
we had him pretty up high. We liked his skill set. We really did. We've always kind of looked for a guy who could be a matchup problem and stretch the field, and he fits that.
Brian, as a general rule of thumb, though, when it comes to a one-year wonder kind of a player, are you a little more nervous? Do you have to do extra work? Make a few more calls than normal on guys like that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we notice it. I mean, that's it's an alert, let's say, and I mean, we're thorough with all our prospects, but we kind of go through our process on every player, and if that's an alert for him that he's only had 1 year of production, then we kind of obviously ask ourselves why and try to get to the bottom of those answers and see if we're comfortable with it, and obviously we were. So.
Guys tonight, because Matt's got a little bit bigger smile on his face.
No, I think he's probably learning how to, he's the head coach, so he's in charge of it all. So he obviously knows whether we take defensive players, offensive players, that's helping our team. I think our offensive coaches are pretty happy about some of the things we did today. But he's been great. Both Matt and I we're very aligned in our vision for what we want to do with this team, and we understand we're going to have to be good on offense, defense, and special teams to get to where we're going. So wherever we at, I think he's pretty happy.
Is there anything that you need to get done still tomorrow? And if you don't, how do you?
Yeah, I think I've talked a little bit about it. I kind of think this roster building thing's 365, and we're going to go into this. We're going to be aggressive and try to take the best players we can, and then when we're done, we'll see. We'll look up at the roster and kind of say, okay, now where do we go from here? There's times you look up at it and say, wow, we really need to do this. We really need to do that. There's other times you're kind of like, well, let's try to get better here. Let's try to get better there. But I think you got to be careful of just trying to check boxes, because you may end up missing on a player that could really, really help your team. Like I've said before, what your needs are right now, by the time we get to August, September, it could change so drastically. And really, from my position, I really think you got to look 2 to 3 years out, and try to keep this team competitive every single year. I think that's my responsibility. So yeah, I mean, we obviously are aware of the things that we want to do, but at the same time, I think you got to be very careful of just checking boxes.
With that said, you've got 4 picks in 2 days. 3 of those players play a lot on the line of scrimmage. Is that just best player available, or is that a concerted effort on your part?
Yeah, I'd like to think it's best player available. I've always thought that, you need to be conscious of taking big people. I think it's a big man's game. God only made so many of them. So if you feel there's one there that can play, you have to really think about that.
Real quick, just going back to the 4th round picks. Over the years, you guys have added a lot of really good football players in the
No doubt.
4th round. Also, you get somebody like Gil Brandt, who's going to be a Hall of Famer, but he's tweeting out that, you reached for Darnell Savage by 70 picks. We don't know what your board looks like. We don't know those types of things. You said on Monday that you guys do your research with the analytics. Were you really convinced that?
I know for a fact we would not have got him by staying at 30.
And that's what made it worthwhile.
Right. Yeah.
Brian, even the most talented players come in like Aaron, Jordy, and Devontae, it's really amazing to watch the growth in the first year or 2 that they do.
Yeah.
They continue to work at it. So that's got to be an important part of your evaluation of players' body.
Correct.
What are the tools, what are the measurables you're trying to do?
For any player, or I think obviously we kind of have a system in place here that's been here since Ron Wolf was here. How we look at certain traits of players that play in the NFL. Ron was really big, and so was Ted, on the history of the NFL. What plays? And we study that, and we look for those things. And and I think for us, the wiring of the player, the football character of the player is really important. It's really tough for guys to get to their maximum potential if they're not wired the right way to handle the adversity of the NFL. So that's a big part of it. And so we spend a lot of time trying to get to know these guys. The tape's the tape. The measurables are the measurables. But getting to know them, and if they're willing to sacrifice for the team, and if winning is important to them, those kind of things, I think are really important.